Hi, y'all. Welcome. I'm so glad you decided to go ahead and try planning an inquiry-based unit. And I'm even more excited that you've chosen to do it with me. Before we really get going, I want to let you know that this course will require effort on your part. The more you put into this, the more you're going to get out of it, and the more your students are going to get out of the way that you planned it. Also, if this is your first time, your first go around with inquiry-based learning, just trust the process and you have to be ready to relinquish some control in your classroom. You have to be ready to give your students the opportunity to learn through inquiry, and that doesn't always involve you, the teacher. Please remember too, that this is meant to be a simple, easy introduction to planning an inquiry-based learning unit. There's a whole lot more that you can think about and include, but I'm just giving you a brief overview. All right, let's get started. For some of you that don't know, or you just need a reminder, inquiry-based learning is a way of guiding our students through the process of learning. It usually starts with some sort of question, a problem, a situation, or a scenario. It's also really handy because it happens to mimic the way that we naturally learn. Okay, think about that for a minute. When we're children, or if you're a parent like me and you have your own children, and you're watching them go through this process of growing and changing and developing and learning, we actually see things that we're curious about in the world around us. When we see these things, we start to question, what is this? What does it do? Why do we have it? And then, of course, we always relate it to something that we already know. So we make connections just naturally as children. Now, I have a really simple example about this because I have an almost 2-year-old daughter. And the first time that she really saw a dog that she can remember and she can relate to, it's this dog called Jim Jim. We live in West Africa, and Jim Jim is like the English way of saying this dog's name because its name is actually in an African dialect called Jula. I have no idea what it means, but that's the name. Moving on. So, of course, she relates Jim Jim to just dog because any time on the street we see a dog, she says Jim Jim. Well, she's relating that dogs are called Jim Jim. So she's using what she already knows and she's relating it to new information. Now, right, because we're not just going to continue to let her call every dog Jim Jim. My husband and I say, "No, baby, that's just a dog. Jim Jim is at home." So then she's starting to learn there's a difference between dog and Jim Jim. And thus, we begin our journey. We want to help our students learn naturally through inquiry, just like they did when they were children, small children. Now, before we can really get started, I think it's actually quite important to know about flow, or the state of flow. If you can see on the right, this is what the book Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience, that's what the front cover looks like. And this book was written by an author who actually is a Hungarian psychologist. Now, I cannot say this author's name, and I don't even want to try because I know I'm just going to butcher it. But on the graph, in the tiny bottom right, you can see his name. So there you are. Now, this author, this Hungarian psychologist, he came up with this idea that based on specific activities that we do, people feel different things. So if we look at this graphic on the left, we can see that this red portion, that's where we find our state of flow. And it really is showing us that the level of skills that we need to have in order to accomplish a challenge or a task, it needs to match the difficulty of that task. So if we're working outside of this flow state, for instance, if a task is not very challenging, but it requires skills that we don't yet have, then we get anxious. But if we have the skills required, but the challenge is too much, the task is too difficult for us, then we're just bored. Now, I'm actually going through Todd Herman's 90-day year program. If you haven't heard of that before, you can Google it. You'll find it really easily. Todd Herman is a high performance coach, and he works with Olympic athletes, really high businessmen. And I actually like his graphic a little bit more because I feel like it speaks to us in education. So you can see it's the same kind of format, but we've put it on the 4 quadrants of a coordinate plane. And in this model, we actually have apathy. So you can see that we need to get our students in a state of flow. We need to give them assignments and tasks that are appropriate for them, not only in how difficult they are, but also in the skills that they require. Our students don't always have the same skills. Now, if you're not so sure about this idea of flow or being in the state of flow, think about this. When you feel like you've really got a good rhythm going and you're doing something that you really enjoy, for me, that's planning out and digging into my curriculum. I absolutely love the detail of that, which is probably why I got my master's degree in curriculum and instruction. Now, when I'm unpacking those standards and I'm trying to plan out my lessons, my units, my grades, my school year even, I experience flow. It's just the right amount of challenge and difficulty, but I have the skills needed to accomplish that. And I feel like I'm working at my full potential and I'm utilizing all those skills effectively and successfully. That feeling, that's what we want our students to feel. Realistically, it's hard to imagine how we can help our students get into their flow in every class, every day, every year. But we can try and help them understand this idea. We've got to help our students to be more self-aware. And I think that we do our kids a disservice by not helping them to become aware of themselves, their strengths, their weaknesses in tangible ways. This is one of those places that we could spend just a little bit of time teaching, and then we can just let them go. All right, so once you've got this idea of flow, let's go ahead and move on to the meat and potatoes of what you're doing here. So, in this course, we're going to be diving deeper into these 6 areas to help you plan a unit around inquiry. Again, if you're still not on the state of flow path with me, or you find it really challenging, how in the world can I get my students in a state of flow? Inquiry is my best answer to you. Now, in each module, you're going to have the opportunity to see my own example that I planned using this very system. I'm also going to give you some advice from my own classroom experiences. All right, let's go ahead and begin, and I'll see you in the next module, Standards.